My pleasure.
Would you be comfortable with a permanent investigation into your life and dealings?
No.
So, look, I understand that people don't like Trump and they object to the way he conducts his business and object to the ideas that undergird his decisions. I get it. But this is not the way to deal with it, is it?
Well, if you're referring to the investigation that relates to the president's sex life, don't care about that.
But that's what the investigation has become. So, look, I think you could make a case, and I agreed with you to this extent, if there's evidence that a political figure who became president colluded with the foreign government, big deal. Like to know if that's true. Maybe it's true.
And luckily we have a way to do that, which is to allow Bob Mueller to do his job.
Okay. But the question is, what job is he doing? And based on the behavior we've seen in the last week, this is an argument, not an argument against the Mueller investigation. It's an argument against what the investigation apparently has become.
Well, luckily, and I think wisely, the special counsel handed that investigation off to someone else. So his focus remains on what he was charged to do.
So I think this would fall into the distinction without a difference category.
Well, check it out. We're in less than a year on this thing. We've got 22 indictments, 100 felonies, 13 Russians, by the way, and 5 guilty pleas. That's a pretty good day's work, and I think we should let him finish his job.
Are all guilty pleas the same? Is pleading guilty to lying to a federal agent the same as pleading guilty to colluding with a foreign government? Or are they in totally different universes?
Of course not, but some of those may actually be going lightly on these guys to get their cooperation. Time will tell. But I think it's absolutely fair to say this special counsel ought to deliver or wind up his work. I don't want it to go on forever. Benghazi took 2 years. I think that's way too long. But I'll tell you what, indicting 13 Russians for interfering with the election is exactly what he was charged to do. I'm glad they were indicted. I hope you are.
Whatever,
I'd like to find out.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm glad. I mean, no, whatever. I mean, let's be totally real. First of all, none of these people are going to trial. Second, it's not even clear to me what they did that threatened our democracy. But that's not the point. The point is that we saw this week federal agents basically break into the office of the president's lawyer in search of facts about the Access Hollywood tape and a porn star.
Right. I think when you say break in, you mean execute a legal warrant.
They came in by force. I mean, they weren't welcome. And
that's what people do when they execute a search
warrant.
But
is it? I'm aware
that's
of
called
that.
Due process, by the way.
I'm aware of that. But is it a good thing? I mean, so I just want a Democrat to say, no, I'm not for this.
Let me make it easy on you. I don't care about the president's sex life. You can put me on record as not wanting to know at all about Donald Trump's sex life.
It's not whether you care about his sex life. It's whether you're comfortable with federal agents executing search warrants in order to learn more about his sex life. Are you comfortable with that?
I don't care about Stormy Daniels. I don't care about a porn star trying to make money. I don't care about cable news trying to get ratings on it. I do care about, and you should care, about Russians interfering with our election. Okay, and I think it is really important to point out that unlike Ken Starr, who made his whole investigation about sex, Bob Mueller has handed that off to a Trump appointee, and we'll let that go where it wants.
It doesn't mean anything.
It means something very important.
No, again, it's a distinction without a difference, but I just want to press you on
let me ask you
whether you're specifically comfortable with the FBI going in with a warrant into the president's lawyer's office in search of materials related to a sex life. Are you comfortable with that?
What I've said several times is I don't care about that.
No, but that's not an answer to the question. Are you comfortable with what the FBI just did?
I hope you and I both agree that if in the course of the Mueller investigation he finds evidence of other crimes unrelated to his investigation, that it would be wrong to ignore them. And so I think the proper thing to do is to hand it off to someone else. In this case, a Trump appointee. But it is not fair to say that's a distinction without a difference. That's staying focused.
Right. I'm not going to ask you the same question for the 5th time because you're not going to answer it. I just want you to say this is not what we were looking for when we appointed a special counsel. This actually looks very much like what Democrats complained about 20 years ago.
If you can't understand that Bob Mueller faced a choice, do it himself, hand it off to somebody else, or ignore it. I think it would have been wrong to do it himself. I think it would have been wrong to ignore it. He handed it off to somebody else.
But what is it? What do you imagine? Hold on. What do you imagine the crime would be? I'm watching liberals who for generations have defended civil liberties look into the camera and say a payoff to a porn star is a violation of campaign finance law.
Right. I don't care about that.
That's insane.
I don't care.
So what would be the crime, the potential crime?
I just told you I don't care.
No, but why wouldn't you care about what the FBI is doing to someone's personal lawyer? You should care about that. You're a lawmaker.
Look, I'm I'm focused on what Robert Mueller is charged to do, and that is to tell us whether the Russians interfered with our election. We know they did, and whether anybody in this administration was playing footsie with them. I'm glad he's staying focused on that. You should be too. Let me answer your question. I think it is disturbing when the federal government is going into somebody's sex life. But if he has evidence of crimes, then it would be wrong to ignore them, and he has handed them off to a separate office. What's wrong
I just want to get you to concede you were uncomfortable with it.
Should he ignore them?
So why? I mean, it depends what the crime is.
Well, that's exactly
right. We sent Martha Stewart to prison for lying to a federal investigator about an investigation into something completely different. So that's technically a crime. It's wrong to do that.
So Tucker, all I'm saying is why don't we let these folks do their job?
We are letting them do their job. You're not calling for me for. I'm not calling for anyone to stop. Then how about this?
Well, so then you are comfortable with them investigating Michael Cohen?
What I'm comfortable with, because I'm wondering if you
let them do their job. I think anytime you're
why not have this? Why not have, just so that partisanship doesn't taint this process or these investigations in any way, let's have a permanent office of special counsel who floats above the justice system, again, on a permanent basis with no timetable and no budget limit, who can investigate every sitting lawmaker or executive. Why not do that?
Yeah, terrible idea. But in this case...
why? Oh, because it's not against Trump.
No, but in this case, you've got a bunch of Republican senators as recently as today.
You know what? Guess who cares what Republican senators think?
Right.
Not me.
Right, but you just asked...
I'm asking you a question about principle.
Excuse me. You just asked for bipartisanship. You've got a bunch of conservative Republican senators. Senator Grassley, Senator Tillis,
I don't care what
Senator
they
Graham.
think. I mean, I literally couldn't be less interested. I want to know what
My point is that you asked for a bipartisan process. You're getting one. And what they're saying is, let this guy, Bob Mueller, do his job.
But why not let him continue to do his job into the next administration? And by the way, focus his attention on Congress. You have lawmakers like yourself. Who knows what you guys are doing? Why don't we have someone independent of DOJ looking into your activities? What's wrong with that? If you're not guilty, why would you worry?
Right, Tucker. What I said is that there should be. Look, I think you'd see a lot of investigations of members of Congress and a bunch of people getting whacked, and that's good. Good. We got way too much dead wood in Congress, and we got a bunch of corrupt people. I'm glad they're going. Amen. But I'll tell you what, and I live under the same scrutiny every day, but let me tell you something. I think you're right that you shouldn't have an open-ended independent counsel investigations. I'm trying to agree with you. But when you've got credible evidence of serious wrongdoing, 22 indictments, 13 Russians, 100 felonies, Tucker, and you have a bipartisan consensus on letting this investigation simply do its work.
Yeah, look, I'm with it. I just wanted to let's roll it up and get to the business of running the country.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Congressman.
It's less than a year, and he's got a bunch of indictments, and we should finish it.
Yeah, really. I feel a lot safer now that Paul Manafort's in jail. Thank you very much
My
for joining
pleasure.
us tonight. Mark Stein is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. I'm carried away with my own rhetoric tonight, Mark. And I love the idea of a permanent independent counsel who investigates everybody in power. And why stop with lawmakers? Why wouldn't he get into the guys who run Google and Facebook? I mean, just sort of someone who's, isn't encumbered by the corruption of the DOJ and who has an endless budget. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, that's right, because there's millions and millions of people, and there's laws against everything. And if you happen to be the guy that they decide to look into, they can find something, or they can turn your associates, or in this case, they can put the squeeze on your lawyer, which I don't care what the congressman says. I find what happened with Michael Cohen absolutely repulsive. Lawyer-client privilege is something that was established by Elizabethan times as a basic principle of common law. The idea that you kick the guy's door down and you take everything, and we're supposed to be reassured because the prosecutor's colleague who's not working on the case will go through everything and decide what is or isn't covered by attorney-client privilege is ludicrous.
Wait. I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you there. You're not from this country, so you may not read the New York Times. But they assured us 2 days ago that if you're not guilty, you shouldn't worry about attorney-client privilege, that the president really has no cause for worry and no cause to hold on to that sacred ancient right if he isn't a criminal. So why should he be worried?
I saw that in the New York Times, and what was also interesting to me is that the story began by announcing that they'd been briefed by 3 people involved with the investigation. So we've already got 3 people leaking to the New York Times that that there's nothing to worry about, that if they do, if this other guy who goes through all the stuff does happen to come across something interesting, he's not going to leak it like the 3 guys who've already leaked it. Federal justice. I'll get annoyed because that congressman was far too sanguine, Tucker. Federal justice is a toilet in this country. It operates on blackmail because everybody knows, Michael Cohen knows that if you get dragged into court, they have a 97% conviction rate.
No, so that can't be right, because that's, I mean, that's Soviet level. Is it really 97%?
That's right. Now, if they take you into court, it's 97%. And so these guys, they say, well, we lean on him, and you say you're looking at 30 years in jail. They're supposedly looking at Michael Cohen because he had a New York taxi medallion business. He ran a fleet of New York taxi cabs. Nobody, you're not telling me that in whatever hotel room he was sitting at, that he had his New York taxi cab documents from a decade ago and was shredding them on the 37th floor of the Comfort Inn or whatever the hell he was in. I mean, this is corrupt, and if Donald Trump is looking for a replacement for the useless Jeff Sessions, I'll gladly volunteer, because federal justice is a disgrace and someone needs to clean. At the same time, Tucker, while I'm getting annoyed here, the FBI won't hand over the unredacted communication to Congress that started all this thing. So we have an out-of-control federal prosecutor who can seize everything he wants from his subject's lawyer, and the FBI, who work for you and the American people, won't even hand over to Congress the unredacted document that started this. Federal justice is corrupt and needs someone serious cleaning it up, and if Jeff Sessions won't do it, he should get out of the way and make way for someone who would.
I don't know why the president would need a lawyer if he's innocent. Why do any of us need lawyers if we're innocent?
No, that's true. That's true.
More Mark Stein.
I wonder if that applies to New York Times editors and New York Times journalists. Let's all go and poke around in all their stuff. After all, if they're innocent, they've got nothing to fear.
Yeah. Give me the password to your Gmail if you're innocent. Yeah. Mark Stein will be back with us in just a minute to discuss the new plan out of California to fix homelessness by building homeless shelters in your backyard. Stay tuned. And then big banks are colluding with the left to curtail your gun rights. We'll explain why you should be worried even if you don't like guns. There's a larger principle at stake. Stay tuned. Well, this week, Bank of America announced it will no longer lend money to companies that manufacture what it calls assault weapons for civilian use. That move comes in the wake of Citigroup's announcement it won't work with retailers unless they bar gun sales to people under 21. News accounts describe these as victories for gun control, and they are. But they're not victories for America. Even if you hate guns and you hate gun owners, even if you want to repeal the Second Amendment entirely, you should not be celebrating this development. You should be worried. It is a threat to you and the country, and here's why. Bank of America is the second largest American bank by assets. A lot of nice people work there. It's huge. It holds more than 10% of all bank deposits in America. The company is big enough that if it aligned with other companies and took direction from progressive groups, as it is in this case, it could make sweeping changes to America without even a single vote being cast. This is a change. It used to be that political activists lobbied lawmakers in Congress when they wanted something changed. They gave money. Those donations were recorded. The rest of us could see it happen. That's happening less and less. Now, they lobby big companies, and the lobbying is done in secret. There's no transparency at all. You might not even know it's happening, and yet it can affect your life immensely, as much as any federal law. Today, it's gun makers. You might be celebrating that. But what if tomorrow it's someone you agree with, or anyone who holds ideas that our leaders find threatening? Pro-life, are you? Opposed to immigration? Suspicious of Wall Street? Corporate America isn't comfortable with those views. So suddenly, I don't know, you can't get a car loan or a mortgage or fill in the blank. A version of this is actually already happening in China on a very large scale. Citizens there are rated on the basis of their obedience to the prevailing orthodoxy. Those who disagree are punished in the marketplace. This is significant because our corporate elites love China. It's a model for them. There's no messy democracy to contend with, and people get rich. In China, corporate power is the same as political power. Ideologues and companies work together, and ordinary people obey because they have no choice. Suddenly, America is moving in that direction. It's ominous. Bank of America ought to stick to banking. It does a good job at that, and it's safer for everybody when they stay in their lane. Antoine Seawright is founder and CEO of Blueprint Strategy and a gun control supporter, and he joins us tonight. Antoine, thanks for coming on. So,
thanks, Tucker, for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. So I understand that you agree with the aims of this. Progressive groups apply pressure to corporate America, and people get in line or they're punished. I get that you like the outcome. But can you see that democracy dies a little bit when this is how we solve our political differences? Why, if you want to change gun laws, wouldn't you, in full view of the rest of the country, go to Congress and make your case? But you're not doing that, are you?
Well, let me tell you what I agree with. What I agree with is what majority of this country agree with, and that is the fact that we need to do something about this issue of guns in this country to prevent another mass shooting from happening. I agree with 75% or somewhere north of that agree with. And look, I commend Bank of America.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to be clear. Those numbers don't mean anything. Something should be done.
Tucker, they may not mean anything.
I agree with that. Okay, but there's no national movement to get Bank of America or Citibank to punish people for violating liberal orthodoxy on guns. There just isn't. This is the result of lobbying from left-wing groups.
Tucker, this is not about the left or the right. This is about common sense. This is about common sense gun reform measures. Look, if Washington, D.C., dysfunctional city, does not step up to the plate and do what needs to be done in this country, I commend corporations for having a corporate responsibility to do things in which the government will not do.
So,
look,
in other words, democracy takes too long. No, I understand. Look, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet, whatever it takes. Will you be as comfortable when corporate... No, let me ask you this. Hold on. I want to take what you just said and extend it into the future. When companies decide that, I don't know, pick a group, Black Lives Matter, has incited riots and said racist things, which it has, all of a sudden, if you're affiliated with Black Lives Matter, you like a Facebook post by Black Lives Matter, you can't get a car loan, because why would we abet this kind of crap? How will you feel about that?
Well, I would feel, keep in mind, Tucker, there's been a period of history in this country where corporations and businesses have denied and done similar things to certain groups of people who live in this country. So we've been there before, but I learned to take... Tucker, I've learned to take battles one fight at a time. And guess what? You, as a private citizen, have the right to not shop with Bank of America. Not
so here's the left lecturing me on the free market.
Tucker,
I love this. Yeah.
Tucker, let me give you a thought to consider, and I'm sure you've heard this hymn before. We can't look to government to solve all of our problems. Therefore, I commend the private sector for stepping up to the plate, willing to do what lawmakers will not willing to do.
It's very clever. Of course, we both know you don't believe a word of it. This is purely transactional. You get what you want.
I believe it in this case, Tucker. Why can't you agree with me?
America to make me obey, that's totally cool with you. But if it whipped around and bit you in the butt, you'd be totally against it, wouldn't you?
Tucker, why can't you agree with me that it takes the private sector and government to get things done sometimes in this country? Why can't you agree with that
Where
fact?
did you get these talking points? Were you an intern for Paul Ryan at one point? I mean, I guess what's so Orwellian about this?
What I stand for is common sense gun reform measures that make sense, and I commend the private sector
just for fun.
for stepping up to the plate.
Try to utter a sentence that is straightforward and actually means what it sounds like. Let's take all of the propaganda, all the cant out of this, and just say what we mean. Well, what you mean clearly is whatever we need to do to make people obey, including using banks or whatever instrument, we're happy to do because the ends justify the means. If you just say that, you know what? I will genuflect before you in gratitude for your honesty. Will you just say that?
Tucker, bless your heart, and I know you want to put things in my mouth to make something sound a certain way, but that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is I commend corporations like Bank of America and others who have stepped up to the plate and who are willing to do what lawmakers in Washington, D.C. and across the country are not willing to do.
You and the Chinese government, I can see that. Antoine, thank you so much for joining us. Good
to see you. Thank you, Tucker.
The state of California, our biggest state, rapidly turning into an unlivable mess. People who live there have stopped lying about it. Now they're trying to split the state into three, because they think it'll be more manageable if it's broken up. The man behind that effort, what actually might happen, joins us next. of the country. So what does it mean if that state breaks apart due to political divisions? The petition right now to split California into 3 states just got enough signatures to go on the ballot this fall. It actually could happen. Tim Draper is one of the most famous venture capitalists in the world, a person who helped start a lot of famous tech companies. He wrote the Cal 3 petition, and he joins us tonight. Tim, thanks for coming on.
Great. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me on your show.
So I'm not really sure what to think of this. It seems like it's possible. It sounds like it's going to be voted on. It could pass in California. Maybe the Congress will approve it. I can understand why California wants to break into 3 states, because it's too big, it's unmanageable, and it's not working. Why would that be good for the rest of the country?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, we know that at least 600,000 Californians want to make sure that we've got Cal 3 passes. And so I think that the rest of the country will just want to do what's right for California. I mean, it takes up the same landmass as 15 states on the East Coast. Right. The population is the equivalent of an average of 6 or 7 states. So I think it's appropriate to have California represented by at least 3 states.
Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Americans don't want to do what's best for California. Just me, for myself, maybe. But we've got a map on the screen here. So the top would be no-Cal, the bottom SoCal, and then Cal would be Los Angeles. Looks like Orange County, maybe some of it. So how would this break up politically? So each state would have 2 senators and then the representative number of members of Congress. But what do you think the political division would be, Republican, Democrat?
Well,
senators and then the representative number of members of Congress. But what do you think the political division would be, Republican, Democrat?
Well, you know, I think what we're really looking at here is we're trying to create states for the next millennial. The blockchain's changing everything. Government is going to be completely different. This isn't a partisan thing one way or another. It's something that the world really needs. And to get a fresh start, I believe that California has the opportunity to now get better representation and get a fresh start. So 3 new states can be created.
Right, but it is
a states can take on whatever kind of governance that they think is appropriate for the next millennial.
Right, but it's a partisan system
that we've got that's kind of ruining California.
So I was just saying it's a partisan system, though. So the rest of us are affected by the balance of, say, the Senate. And it should be interesting to know what new balance we'd get if this happened. But let me just ask you finally, one of the many things California would divide is its debt.
I actually think that these 3 new states are going to empower people to realize what's possible in government, and then all these governments will realize that they can do a better job and they can potentially compete with one another down the road for citizens, and which is what they kind of do now, but California is kind of a monopoly. Nobody wants to leave, but we're still stuck with the same government we've had for all these years, and it's failing our kids, it's failing our it's not safe here. We have many homeless people, we have a lot of big problems. The education system is just about the worst in all 50 states, and it's the biggest state. So it really does need sort of a revamp and a restart, and I think this is a good start to doing that, because then people can say, well, let's start from first principles. How do we empower these people? How do we create these new states, and how do we make these states really important and relevant for the next millennial? And how do we set a good example for all the other states in the country?
I think that, it can't be worse than it is now. So I think you make a fair point. Tim Draper, thank you very much for that. Possible breakup isn't the only news from California tonight. Mark Stein will rejoin us just ahead to talk about Los Angeles' new plan to fix homelessness by paying residents to build homeless shelters in their own backyards. Not in your backyard? Oh, yeah, in your backyard. America remains on the brink of military action in Syria, but could bombing Bashar Assad spark a major conflict with Russia? leading to a much wider war, a global war. That's next. Mark Zuckerberg took all the attention on Capitol Hill yesterday, but he wasn't the only one testifying, and his remarks weren't even the most worrisome, though they were. Several counterintelligence experts were also in the House yesterday, and they testified about a massive ongoing effort by the government of China to infiltrate America with spies and steal our technology. Sounds like a novel, but it's happening, they say. American universities, for example, have more than 350,000 Chinese students, plus about 100 Confucius centers, which are bankrolled by the Chinese government and are organs of their propaganda. This web of students and professors is stealing our secrets on robotics, the experts say, artificial intelligence, aerospace engineering, and other fields critical to our national defense. Does anyone in Washington care? Well, you know the answer. Not at all. They only care when the spies speak Russian. Why is that? It'll be the future of many shows on this hour coming up. But meantime, the White House says it will soon reach a decision about how to respond to a chemical attack in Syria they say was instigated by the government of Bashar al-Assad. It will apparently reach that decision, even though so far we do not have proof that Assad was behind it. Of course, we'll keep you posted. If the U.S. does intervene in Syria, however, it could rapidly put this country in direct conflict with Russia, which for many years has backed the Assad regime. And unlike Assad, Russia has a vast arsenal of nuclear weapons. So what is likely to happen? What should we be worried about? Stephen Cohen is an editor of The Nation, a professor emeritus of Russian studies at NYU and Princeton, one of the most famous professors of Russian studies there is, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on. How worrisome, you followed the relationship between the U.S. and Russia for decades, how worrisome is this moment?
More worried than I've ever been for nearly 50 years of studying and participating in U.S.-Russian relations. I think the situation, your generation was born after the Cuban Missile Crisis, but you were taught in school, as were my children, that the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 was the moment when we came closest ever to nuclear war with Russia. And the learned lesson was supposed to be we should never get there again, and we are very close, and here's why. If Trump or somebody sends these missiles against Syria, there are Russian soldiers embedded in almost all Syrian army units, even in dormitories. If, and this I know because Moscow has said so, if Russians die, if Damascus is attacked, the capital of Syria, Russia will retaliate with its excellent weapons, every bit as good as ours. Some people say in some regards, in missile technology, better. Russia will strike, Americans in Syria will die, and we will be where we have never, ever, ever been with Russia, killing each other, bearing in mind that both nations are laden with nuclear weapons. So I am more worried than I have ever been in my life, at least since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
So U.S. forces have killed over 200 Russian citizens in Syria in recent weeks.
Right.
You heard American officials boasting about that just the other day. Yeah. Is there some reason to think that helps the United States? Do we benefit in some way by killing Russians in Syria?
Not that I can think of, any more than Russians would benefit from killing Americans anywhere. That's always been a no-no, Tucker. I mean, that's been a no-no throughout the first 40-year Cold War. Why would anybody even think of it? But you've asked a really good question. After that happened, we don't know how many Russians died. The Russians let it pass. But they said, if it ever happens again, we will retaliate, because those Russians were killed with American-operated missiles. And they have said, and by they I mean all the way up to the Kremlin, we will retaliate. And since Americans are still there manning those Syrian units, that is why what happened the first time when the Russians let it pass, the killing of Russians, won't happen again. Let me add something that may not be known to you or your viewers. It is a deeply held belief, whether they're right or wrong, it's a belief in the Kremlin, in the Russian political class, that the United States, our country, has waged political, diplomatic, economic war against Russia for at least 10 years. And the attitude in Moscow, expressed daily, is we've had enough. You could interpret that for what you want.
Yeah, I still am totally confused as to how this helps us in any way at all, but I appreciate the warning And I think warnings from you should be taken seriously. Professor, thank you for this. Time next for final exam. You can see if you can beat our experts at remembering what happened this week. So much happened that it may be tough. You'll find out in a minute if you've retained any of it. Stay tuned. We learn who at Fox has been paying attention to the news. Keep in mind, it's our job to do that. Who's been doing his or her job? This week's defending champion is Fox News Headlines 24/7 anchor and tech correspondent for this show, Brett Larson. His challenger, Katie Freitas, editor-in-chief of the Daily Walkthrough and one of the world's great experts on video games.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you for keeping abreast of that burgeoning industry. I appreciate it.
I do try.
All right. You know the rules. I beg your pardon, but to our viewers who may not, here's what they are. Hands on buzzers. I'm going to ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You have to wait until I finish asking it in order to answer. Each correct answer is worth a point. If you get it wrong, you lose a point. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
The exhales are a sign. Question 1. Mark Zuckerberg just got grilled on Capitol Hill and was asked repeatedly about censorship at Facebook of 2 conservative sisters. These sisters are famous online for supporting President Trump. Who are they?
Diamond and Silk.
Diamond and Silk. No, these are people I'm asking about.
Yeah, they're the contributors.
Oh, Diamond and Silk. Okay, great. Diamond and Silk.
Yeah.
I'm totally kidding. Of course, I know who they are. Let's see if you're right.
Diamond and Silk have a question for you.
Let me tell you something right now. Diamond and Silk is not terrorism.
Why is Facebook censoring conservative bloggers such as Diamond and Silk?
How are we allowing this one entity to control almost the whole world? This is dangerous.
I believe, is that Diamond and Silk?
Everybody knows Diamond and Silk, including Jeff. All right. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. That's beginner's luck again.
Beginner's luck again.
You were like a fraction of a second faster than me.
Okay.
Because he hired a coach. Question 2, sorry to give that away. Here it is. Which UFC fighter is out on bail tonight after grabbing a hand truck and throwing it through the window of a bus in Brooklyn, New York?
Oh, I don't know.
Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. Boy, you are up on this. Is it Conor McGregor? I don't know. Let's check the tape.
UFC champion Conor McGregor turned himself into authorities last night following his rampage backstage at the Barclays Center.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got to give mad props to Jared Max for that one, though, because
I scoff at the idea of toxic masculinity, but if it exists, that might have been it.
That might have been it. Yeah.
Throwing a hand truck? You got to be a man to throw a hand truck. I'm impressed. Like the Mongols across the Russian steppe, Brett, you are sweeping through these questions. Let's see if you can keep it going. Question 3. Which member of the royal family had the world in hysterics this week when he or she jokingly compared a noisy helicopter to Presidents Trump and Obama? Katie Freitas.
I don't remember. The Queen. I don't remember her.
Queen.
Queen, what's her face? Who's the Queen?
Of what country?
Britain.
Britain. The Queen. Is it the Queen?
Why do we always go round and round when we want to talk? Sounds like President Trump. President Obama.
Wow, that's some real shit.
We are not impressed. We are not impressed at all. Are our judges impressed? Is the Queen adequate? They're saying it is.
Yes.
Katie, all right.
All right, you're on the board.
1 to 2 going into question 4. Here it is. The city of Los Angeles is fighting global warming by taking an unusual approach. Won't be surprised to hear that. This approach involves paint. What is the city doing? Paint. It involves paint.
I don't.
It's huffing paint until the problem goes away. Just kidding. No, it's not huffing paint.
I don't know.
I don't know.
They're going to hug a tree every time they paint a wall? I don't know.
It involves the streets, our judges are saying.
Is it something for, like...
You got a buzz.
No. Whatever.
Katie Freitas.
I have no idea. Does it have something to do with the sun? And the heat. And
well, presumably it would have to do with the sun, since it's global warming that they're trying to fight.
I have no idea.
Can you be more specific?
Is it something about reflecting the heat from the sun, maybe off the paint that they're putting on the ground? I have no idea.
Whoa! Does it have to do with reflecting the sun off the street
I'm gonna give you mad props
with the paint they are applying? To the tape we go.
The city of Los Angeles is using taxpayer dollars to combat climate change by painting its streets white. The pricey project is expected to take 20 years to complete, while costing the city nearly $40,000 per mile.
Dude.
Did I get it right?
You just made that up on the fly and got it right. You should be a global warming engineer.
Oh, no.
Oh.
No. That's the extent of my intelligence on that.
Wow. Well, that's revealing on many levels, but I'm impressed that you got it.
I'm terrified.
All right.
This is it for the win.
It's 2-2. Maybe she'll make up this one, too. Final question. Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth just became the first sitting U.S. senator to do this while in office.
You didn't wait for him to finish.
She's pregnant, and she's going to have a baby. First female senator to have a baby, as a senator.
Katie gets to answer first.
First sitting senator to have a baby?
And I just want to say that I'm reflecting the judgment of the judges. I make no independent judges. I'm merely a neutral arbiter here, a puppet controlled by New York. Oh. So, Katie, your guess is the first senator to give birth, mirroring Brett, who buzzed in early's response. Let's see if you and him were right.
Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois has given birth to a baby girl, making her the first senator to give birth while in office. And our congratulations to her and little baby Miley.
And my congratulations to you. You are welcome. For the record, I knew the answer.
It's a bittersweet. Okay, wait. Okay,
I don't.
Since we have a technicality, we're going to throw in one bonus question. Oh, and the bonus question always remains the same, and the judges have told me to make it up on the fly. Oh. And I don't know what they're going to do with the answer. What is the capital of Burkina Faso? The former the country formerly known as Upper Volta, has a capital called what? Ouagadougou. No! Okay, I'm sorry. That's the all-purpose.
Oh, come on!
I'm sorry.
That's a real question?
That was it.
Can I chime in for sexual pandas?
No, you may not. That is, in fact, we're not going there. You all were great. I'm sorry that it had to end this way, but
thank you for your help.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It worked out well.
Katie, you did a remarkable job feeling your way.
I'm a good listener.
Through that. Okay, so you win the coveted Eric Wemple mug, which shows Eric Wemple at his, his